The gunshot that shattered Winifred Foster's kitchen window on that sweltering August morning in 1882 was meant for her younger brother, but it was her fury that sent the would-be assassin running back to whatever hole he had crawled from. She stood in the doorway of her ranch house just outside Yuba City, California, holding her father's old rifle with steady hands while her brother cowered behind the water barrel, and she realized with bitter clarity that this was her life now. Her father had been dead 3 months, her mother 2 years before that, and the vultures were already circling what remained of the Foster Ranch, 20 acres of decent grazing land, and a small herd of cattle that represented everything her family had built in this unforgiving valley. Winifred was 22 years old, tall and lean from hard work. With dark auburn hair she kept braided down her back and green eyes that had seen too much loss too soon. The ranch hands her father had employed had drifted away after his death, unwilling to take orders from a woman, and her brother Thomas at 19 was more interested in cards and whiskey than cattle. She had tried to run the place herself, rising before dawn to mend fences, check the herd, haul water, and do the 1,000 other tasks that kept a ranch from falling into ruin. But the neighboring ranchers saw her struggle as an opportunity rather than a reason to help. The Caldwell Ranch bordered hers to the north, and Marcus Caldwell had made it clear he wanted her land. He had offered to buy it for a fraction of its worth, then offered to marry her and take the burden off her shoulders, as if she were some helpless creature who needed a man to think for her. When she refused both offers with language that made him turn red, he had started letting his cattle drift onto her land, tearing down sections of fence, and now apparently he had moved on to more direct intimidation. She lowered the rifle only when the dust from the fleeing rider had settled, then turned to her brother with exasperation written across her face. Thomas emerged from behind the barrel looking sheepish, his sandy hair sticking up in all directions and his shirt wrinkled from sleep, though it was nearly 8 in the morning. "You owe money to Caldwell?" she asked, though she already knew the answer from the sick expression on his face. "I thought I could win it back," Thomas said weakly. "I had a good hand, Winnie, I swear I did, but he had better cards and now he says I owe him $200 or he will take it out of the ranch. $200 might as well have been 2,000. They barely had enough to get through the winter as it was, and the cattle would not fetch decent prices until spring. Winifred felt the weight of it settle on her shoulders like a physical burden, but she refused to let her brother see her despair. "Get inside," she said quietly, "and stay away from Caldwell's poker games." She spent the morning riding the fence line, checking for damage and trying to calculate how long they could hold out. The summer heat shimmered off the flat valley floor, and the Sacramento River in the distance looked like a ribbon of silver cutting through the golden hills. This land was beautiful in its harsh way, and it was hers, and she would be damned if she would let Marcus Caldwell or anyone else take it from her. She was repairing a section of fence that had been deliberately cut when she heard the sound of hoofbeats approaching. Her rifle was in the saddle scabbard on her horse 20 feet away, and she cursed herself for the carelessness even as she turned to face whatever new trouble was heading her way. The rider who came over the rise was not one of Caldwell's men. He sat easy in the saddle on a rangy buckskin horse, and even from a distance, she could tell he was a man who had spent his life on horseback. He was tall and broad-shouldered, wearing dusty range clothes and a dark hat pulled low against the sun, and he rode with the quiet confidence of someone who knew exactly what he was doing. He reined in a respectful distance away and touched the brim of his hat. "Madam," he said, and his voice was deep and weathered like wind over stone, "I am looking for the Foster Ranch. Would I be addressing Miss Foster? You would. Winifred said warily, not moving toward her horse but calculating whether she could reach it if necessary. "What is your business?" "Name is Zachary Rawlins," he said. "I heard in town you might be looking for a ranch hand. I am looking for work." Winifred studied him with narrowed eyes. He was older than her, probably close to 30, with a lean, weathered face and dark eyes that met hers directly. There was something steady about him, something quiet and competent, but she had learned the hard way that appearances could be deceiving. "I cannot pay much," she said bluntly. "Room and board and whatever I can manage at the end of the season might be nothing." "That would suit me fine," Zachary said. "I am not looking to get rich, just looking for honest work." "Why would you want to work for a woman?" The question came out sharper than she intended, edged with all the bitterness of the past 3 months. "Most men around here seem to think a woman has no business running a ranch." Something that might have been amusement flickered in Zachary's dark eyes. "I have worked for plenty of men who did not know a damn thing about ranching," he said. "Figure a woman who knows her business would be a pleasant change." "Do you know your business, Miss Foster?" "I do," Winifred said flatly. "My father taught me everything he knew before he died. I can rope, brand, doctor cattle, break horses, and shoot straight. What I need is someone who can help me hold this place together long enough to get through the winter." Zachary swung down from his horse with an easy grace and walked over to examine the fence she had been working on. He ran his hand along the cut wire, then looked at the surrounding posts with a practiced eye. "This was not accident or weather," he said. "Someone cut this deliberate." "I know," Winifred said. "The neighboring rancher wants my land. He has been making trouble." "Caldwell?" Zachary asked, and when she nodded, something shifted in his expression. "I know of him. He has a reputation." "For what?" "For taking what he wants, one way or another." Zachary pulled wire cutters from his saddlebag and began helping her with the fence without being asked. His hands were scarred and capable, and he worked with the efficiency of long practice. "You have any other hands?" "Just me and my brother, and Thomas is not much help." Winifred picked up her side of the fence and held it taut while he worked. "I had 3 men working for me after my father died, but they all left. Said they would not take orders from a woman." "Their loss," Zachary said simply. He finished securing the wire and stepped back to examine his work. "If you are willing to take me on, Miss Foster, I will give you an honest day's work for whatever you can pay. And I will not run off because you are a woman." Winifred wanted to trust him, wanted to believe that someone had finally shown up who would help rather than hinder, but years of hard experience made her cautious. "Why?" she asked. "Why would you stay when others would not?" Zachary was quiet for a moment, coiling the extra wire with steady hands. "My mother ran a ranch by herself after my father died," he said finally. "I was too young to be much help, and the neighbors treated her the same way yours are treating you. She lost the ranch when I was 12. I have always thought if she had just one person willing to work with her instead of against her, things might have been different." He met her eyes squarely. "I cannot change what happened to her, but I can help you hold onto what is yours." There was no false charm in his words, no attempt to manipulate or persuade beyond the simple truth of what he was saying. Winifred made her decision in that moment, knowing it might be a mistake, but also knowing she had no real choice. "You are hired," she said. "Bunkhouse is behind the main house. It is not much, but it is dry and there are spare blankets. I will show you around the property this afternoon." Relief flickered across Zachary's face, though he hid it quickly. "Thank you, Miss Foster. I will not let you down." "Call me Winifred," she said, swinging up onto her horse. "If we are going to work together, we might as well skip the formalities." The afternoon sun was brutal as she showed Zachary around the property, pointing out the boundaries, the watering holes, the areas where the cattle liked to graze. He asked good questions and seemed to take in everything she told him, and she found herself relaxing slightly in his presence. He did not try to take over or tell her how things should be done, just listened and nodded and made mental notes. They were riding back toward the house when they saw the dust cloud approaching from the north. Winifred felt her stomach tighten as she recognized Marcus Caldwell riding at the head of 4 men, all of them armed and looking like they meant business. "That him?" Zachary asked quietly, his hand drifting toward the rifle on his saddle. "That is him," Winifred confirmed. "Stay close. He usually just talks, but with what happened this morning, I am not sure what to expect." Marcus Caldwell was a big man in his 40s, gone soft around the middle from too much good living, with a florid face and pale eyes that never seemed to smile even when his mouth did. He reined in his horse a dozen yards away and looked from Winifred to Zachary with obvious calculation. "Miss Foster," he said, his voice falsely jovial, "I heard there was some unpleasantness at your place this morning. Wanted to ride over and make sure you were all right." "I am fine," Winifred said coldly. "No thanks to whoever sent that man to shoot up my property." Caldwell held up his hands in a gesture of innocence. "Now, I do not know anything about that. Could have been anyone. These are dangerous times, young woman alone out here with no man to protect her." His eyes slid to Zachary. "Who is this?" "My new ranch hand," Winifred said. "Zachary Rawlins." "Zachary, this is Marcus Caldwell." "Rawlins," Caldwell repeated, his eyes narrowing. "I have heard that name. You used to work for the Triple R outfit up near Sacramento." "I did," Zachary said evenly. "They let you go. I left. The owner died and his son ran the place into the ground." "I do not work for fools." One of Caldwell's men snickered and Caldwell's face darkened. "That's so. Well, Miss Foster does not have enough money to pay you, Rawlins. She can barely keep her own head above water, let alone pay a ranch hand. You would be better off working for me. I pay top wages." "I am satisfied with my current arrangement," Zachary said. Caldwell's false joviality vanished. "Your brother owes me money, Miss Foster. $200. I have been patient, but my patience is running out." "Thomas is young and stupid," Winifred said. "But that does not give you the right to send gunmen onto my property." "I told you I do not know anything about that," Caldwell said. "But accidents happen out here. A woman alone trying to run a ranch, things can go wrong. A fire could start, cattle could stampede, all sorts of unfortunate events." He leaned forward in his saddle. "Or you could be sensible. Marry me, combine our ranches, and you would not have to worry about any of this. You would be taken care of." "I would rather die," Winifred said flatly. Caldwell's face went red. "You are making a mistake, girl. I am trying to help you. By threatening me. By sending someone to shoot at my brother." Winifred felt her temper rising, hot and sharp. "I do not need your help, Caldwell. I do not need any man's help. I can run this ranch on my own." "No, you cannot," Caldwell said with vicious satisfaction. "You are too proud and too stubborn, and it will destroy you. Your father should have married you off when he had the chance instead of filling your head with ideas about being independent. A woman alone is not natural." "She is not alone," Zachary said quietly. The words were soft, but there was steel underneath them. "And I think you should leave now, Caldwell. You have said your piece." Caldwell stared at Zachary for a long moment, his pale eyes cold with calculation. "You are making an enemy, Rawlins. That is not wise in these parts." "I will take my chances," Zachary said. Caldwell wheeled his horse around, his men following suit. 2 weeks, he called back over his shoulder. 2 weeks to pay what your brother owes, Miss Foster, or I will take it out in cattle. And then we will see how long you can hold out." They watched him ride away in a cloud of dust, and Winifred felt the tension slowly drain from her shoulders. She became aware that her hands were shaking, and she gripped the reins tighter to hide it. "Thank you," she said quietly, "for backing me up." "No thanks needed," Zachary said. He was watching the retreating riders with a thoughtful expression. "He is serious, you know. 2 weeks is not much time." "I know." Winifred turned her horse toward home, suddenly exhausted. "I do not have $200. I do not even have 50. We are going to lose cattle, and once we start losing cattle, we might as well give up the whole ranch." "Maybe not," Zachary said slowly. "How many head do you have?" "About 60 plus calves. Most of them are still young, will not fetch good prices until spring." "What about the horses?" Winifred glanced at him in surprise. "I have 6 horses, counting the plow horse." "Why?" "I noticed you have some good bloodlines in your string. That bay mare in the corral, she looks like she has racing blood. And the buckskin gelding has good conformation. If you could spare 1 or 2, we might be able to sell them in Sacramento for better prices than cattle would fetch right now." Hope flickered in Winifred's chest, fragile but real. "The bay is my father's favorite saddle horse. She is fast and smart and trained for cattle work. She might fetch 75, maybe $100 from the right buyer." "Then we take her to Sacramento," Zachary said. "Tomorrow, if the weather holds. We can be there in a day and a half if we push it, sell the horse and be back before Caldwell's deadline." "It is not a perfect solution, but it might buy you some time." Winifred wanted to argue, wanted to say that the bay mare was too valuable to sell, but she knew he was right. 1 horse in exchange for keeping the ranch was a trade she had to make. "All right," she said. "We leave at first light." That evening, as the sun set in a blaze of orange and gold over the valley, Winifred stood in the barn brushing down the bay mare and trying not to think about how much she would miss her. The horse had been her father's pride, a gift from a grateful neighbor whose son he had pulled from a flooded irrigation ditch, and riding her always made Winifred feel close to him again. But sentiment was a luxury she could not afford. Zachary appeared in the barn doorway, silhouetted against the fading light. "Your brother wants to come with us to Sacramento," he said. "I told him it was your decision." "Absolutely not," Winifred said immediately. "Thomas is the reason we are in this mess. He can stay here and think about what his gambling has cost us." Zachary was quiet for a moment. "He feels bad about it," he said. "I talked to him while you were out here. He knows he made a mistake." "Knowing you made a mistake and not making it again are 2 different things," Winifred said bitterly. She ran the brush along the mare's flank in long, soothing strokes. "My father tried to teach him responsibility, but Thomas just wants the easy way. Cards and whiskey and big dreams that never amount to anything." "He is young," Zachary said. "People can change. You sound like you are defending him." "I am not defending what he did. I am just saying that people deserve a chance to make things right." Zachary leaned against the barn door, his face in shadow. "My father was a drinking man. He lost everything we had to whiskey before he died. I hated him for a long time because of it. But looking back, I think he was just lost and scared and did not know how to ask for help. Maybe your brother is the same way." Winifred stopped brushing and looked at him. In the gathering darkness, she could not see his expression clearly, but there was something in his voice that made her chest tighten. "Did you ever forgive him?" she asked. "Your father, eventually," Zachary said. "Too late to tell him, but I did. It made carrying the anger easier." She thought about that as she finished with the mare and closed up the barn for the night. Thomas was waiting on the porch of the house, looking hopeful and nervous, and she realized that Zachary was right. Her brother had made a terrible mistake, but holding it against him forever would not fix anything. "You can come," she told Thomas, "but you do exactly what we tell you when we tell you, no questions." "Understood." Relief flooded Thomas's face. "Understood. Thank you, Winnie." I promise I will make this right. You better, she said, because I am not bailing you out again. They left before dawn the next morning, 3 riders heading northeast toward Sacramento with the bay mare on a lead rope. The valley was cool in the early morning, the air still carrying a hint of moisture from the river, and Winifred felt a strange sense of freedom as they rode. For the first time in months, she was not alone with her burdens. Zachary rode beside her with the easy competence of a man who had spent his life in the saddle, and even Thomas seemed subdued and serious, as if he finally understood the gravity of what his actions had cost them. They made good time, stopping only to water the horses and eat a cold lunch of bread and dried meat. Zachary was not much for conversation, but his silence was comfortable rather than awkward, and Winifred found herself relaxing in his presence. He pointed out things as they rode: a hawk circling overhead, a coyote den in the rocks, signs of where other riders had passed recently. And she realized he was teaching her without making it obvious, sharing knowledge the way her father used to do. By late afternoon, they had crossed the river and were entering the outskirts of Sacramento. The city was bustling and chaotic after the quiet of the ranch, with wagons crowding the streets and people everywhere, and Winifred felt suddenly overwhelmed by the noise and confusion. But Zachary seemed to know exactly where he was going, leading them through the streets to a stable near the edge of town. The stable owner was a grizzled old man named Patterson, who greeted Zachary with surprised recognition. "Zach Rawlins," he said, shaking his hand. "I heard you left the Triple R. Where have you been?" "Around," Zachary said. "I am working for Miss Foster now, down near Yuba City. We brought a horse to sell, wondering if you might know anyone looking for good saddle stock." Patterson walked around the bay mare with a critical eye, checking her legs and teeth and running his hands over her conformation. "She is a beauty," he said finally. "Good bloodlines, well trained. I might know a buyer. There is a gentleman from San Francisco in town looking for horses for his daughters. He has money and he wants quality. Bring her around tomorrow morning and I will introduce you." They spent the night at a boarding house near the stable, Winifred in a tiny room barely big enough for the narrow bed, and Thomas and Zachary sharing another down the hall. She lay awake for a long time listening to the unfamiliar sounds of the city, worrying about everything that could go wrong, but eventually exhaustion pulled her under and she slept. The next morning, Patterson introduced them to the buyer, a well-dressed man in his 50s named Harrison who examined the bay mare with the careful attention of someone who knew horses. He watched Winifred put the mare through her paces in the corral, demonstrating her speed and agility and responsiveness to commands, and when they were finished, he nodded slowly. "She is exactly what I have been looking for," Harrison said. "My eldest daughter is an accomplished rider and needs a horse that can keep up with her." "What are you asking?" Winifred's mind raced, trying to calculate what was fair without underselling. $150, she said, the number higher than she had originally hoped but not unreasonable given the mare's quality. Harrison did not even blink. "Done," he said. "I will have my man bring the money around this afternoon. Can you deliver her to my hotel?" "Of course," Winifred said, hardly daring to believe it. $150 was enough to pay off Thomas's debt with money left over for supplies and repairs. After Harrison left, she turned to Zachary with a broad smile. "We did it," she said. "We actually did it." "You did it," Zachary corrected. "That was good negotiating. You could have asked for 200 and he probably would have paid it." 150 is more than enough," Winifred said. She felt lighter than she had in months, as if a physical weight had been lifted from her shoulders. "We can pay Caldwell and still have money for the ranch. We might actually make it through the winter." Thomas was grinning too, his earlier shame replaced by genuine joy at the success. "I am sorry, Winnie," he said again. "I am really sorry for all the trouble I caused." "I know," Winifred said. "Just do not do it again." They collected the money that afternoon and started the ride back to Yuba City, arriving home 2 days later dusty and tired but triumphant. Winifred counted out $200 and sealed it in an envelope, then sent Thomas to deliver it to Caldwell with explicit instructions not to engage in conversation, just hand over the money and leave. Thomas returned an hour later looking shaken. "Caldwell was not happy," he said. "He kept asking where we got the money, said he knows you did not have it last week. He thinks you did something illegal." "He can think whatever he wants," Winifred said. "As long as the debt is paid, he has no claim on us." But Caldwell did not see it that way. 3 days later he showed up at the ranch again, this time alone, and the expression on his face was cold calculation rather than anger. "You sold that bay mare," he said without preamble. "Patterson told me. That was a valuable horse, Miss Foster, worth more than $200. "It was my horse to sell," Winifred said. They were standing in the yard between the house and the barn, and she was acutely aware of Zachary working nearby, close enough to intervene if needed. "And the debt is paid. We have no further business." "That is where you are wrong," Caldwell said. "See, I have been thinking. You are sitting on valuable property here and you are too stubborn to see reason, but I am a patient man. I can wait." He smiled, and it did not reach his eyes. "How many more horses can you sell, Miss Foster? How many more winters can you hold out on your own? Eventually you will break, and when you do, I will be here to pick up the pieces." "I will never sell to you," Winifred said. "I will burn this place to the ground before I let you have it." "That can be arranged," Caldwell said softly. "Good day, Miss Foster. Give my regards to your hired man." He rode away, and Winifred stood staring after him with a sick feeling in her stomach. She became aware of Zachary standing beside her, his presence solid and reassuring. "He is not going to give up," Zachary said quietly. "I know." Winifred wrapped her arms around herself, suddenly cold despite the afternoon heat. "I do not know what else to do. We paid the debt. We followed the law, but he does not care about any of that. Then we need to make sure he knows we are not easy targets," Zachary said. "I will start sleeping in the barn, keep watch at night. And we need to be more careful about the perimeter, maybe set up some early warning systems so we know if anyone comes onto the property after dark." "This is not what you signed up for," Winifred said. "You came here for ranch work, not to be a guard against threats." Zachary looked at her steadily. "I came here to help you keep your ranch," he said. "Whatever that takes." The sincerity in his voice made something in Winifred's chest tighten, a feeling she could not quite name. She had been alone for so long, carrying the weight of everything by herself, that having someone stand beside her felt strange and unfamiliar and deeply comforting all at once. "Thank you," she said quietly, "for everything." Over the following weeks, they fell into a rhythm. Zachary was as good as his word, working from dawn until dusk repairing fences, moving cattle to better grazing, fixing the leaky barn roof, and a dozen other tasks that had been piling up. Thomas, chastened by his mistakes, threw himself into the work with surprising dedication. And slowly, the ranch began to look less like a failing enterprise and more like a working operation. Winifred found herself watching Zachary when he did not know she was looking, noticing the efficient way he moved, the quiet competence with which he approached every task, the patience he showed when teaching Thomas new skills. He was different from the other men she had known, content to take direction without his pride getting in the way, willing to admit when he did not know something rather than pretending expertise he did not have. One evening in early September, As the heat of summer began to give way to cooler nights, Winifred was working in the vegetable garden behind the house when Zachary came to find her. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of purple and gold, and the air smelled of dry grass and distant smoke from someone burning brush. "I fixed that section of fence on the south boundary," he said, "but there is something you should see." He led her out to the edge of the property where a section of fence had been cut again, but this time there was something else. Someone had driven stakes into the ground marking a new boundary line, one that cut into her property by a good 20 feet. "Caldwell?" she asked, though she already knew the answer. "Has to be," Zachary said. "He is claiming this as his land. It is not legal, but if we do not challenge it, he will just keep pushing the boundary further and further." Winifred felt rage rising in her chest, hot and sharp. "I am so tired of this," she said. "I am tired of fighting him, tired of always being on guard, tired of feeling like I have to justify my existence here." "I know," Zachary said. He pulled up one of the stakes and threw it back onto Caldwell's side of the fence. "But giving up is what he wants. He wants you to be so tired and worn down that you just surrender." "Sometimes I think about it," Winifred admitted. The confession felt dangerous, but Zachary was standing there in the fading light looking at her with such steady understanding that the words just came. "I think about selling, taking whatever I can get and going somewhere else. Starting over where no one knows me and no one cares whether a woman should run a ranch or not." "You could do that," Zachary said. "But would you be happy?" "I do not know," Winifred said honestly. "I just know I am not happy right now, fighting all the time, never having a moment's peace." Zachary was quiet for a long moment, pulling up the rest of the stakes and tossing them aside. When he finally spoke, his voice was thoughtful. "My mother used to say that the things worth having are the things you have to fight for. She fought for her ranch every day, even when it was killing her, because it was hers and it mattered. She did not win in the end, but she never regretted trying." "That is a sad story," Winifred said. "Maybe," Zachary agreed. "But it taught me that fighting for something you believe in, even if you lose, is better than giving up without trying. You built this place with your father, Winifred. It is your legacy. Caldwell does not get to take that from you just because he is bigger and meaner." The passion in his voice surprised her, and she turned to look at him properly. In the dying light, she could see the strong lines of his face, the intensity in his dark eyes, and she realized that he cared about this ranch almost as much as she did. Not because it was his, but because it was hers and he believed she deserved to keep it. "You are right," she said. "I will not give up. Not yet." Something shifted between them in that moment, an understanding that went deeper than words. Zachary held her gaze for a heartbeat longer than necessary, and Winifred felt her breath catch in her chest. Then Thomas called from the house that dinner was ready, and the moment broke. They walked back together in companionable silence, and Winifred tried to ignore the way her heart was beating just a little faster than normal. That night, lying in bed, she thought about Zachary's words and the way he had looked at her, and she realized with a start that she was starting to care about him as more than just a hired hand. The realization was both thrilling and terrifying. She had told herself for years that she did not need a man, did not want the complications and compromises that came with relationships, but Zachary was different. He did not try to control or diminish her. Instead, he seemed to admire her strength, respect her decisions, stand beside her rather than in front of her. She fell asleep thinking about the future, and for the first time in months, the dreams were not all nightmares. The next few weeks passed in a blur of work and small moments of connection. Zachary taught her a new technique for breaking horses that was gentler and more effective than the harsh methods her father had used. She showed him the best fishing spots along the river, places her father had taken her as a child. They worked side by side in the barn, talked during evening meals, sat on the porch watching the sun set over the valley. Thomas noticed the growing closeness and teased her about it, and Winifred found herself blushing and defensive in a way she had not felt since she was a girl. But she did not deny it, because denying it would have felt like a lie. One afternoon in late September, they were moving cattle to a new grazing area when Winifred's horse stepped in a gopher hole and went down hard. She rolled clear, years of riding experience saving her from being trapped under the falling animal, but she landed badly on her left arm and felt something crack. The pain was immediate and intense, radiating up from her wrist in hot waves. She sat up gasping, cradling her arm against her chest, and heard Zachary shouting her name. He was off his horse and beside her in seconds, his hands gentle as he examined her arm. "Can you move your fingers?" he asked. She tried and gasped again. "Barely." "I think it is broken," Zachary said grimly. He looked around at the empty landscape, calculating distances. "We are 3 miles from the house. Can you ride if I help you mount?" "I can ride," Winifred said through gritted teeth. "Help me up." He got her onto her horse with infinite care, then swung up behind her, wrapping one arm around her waist to steady her while he took the reins. The ride back to the ranch was torture, every jolt sending fresh waves of pain through her arm, but Zachary kept up a steady stream of conversation, his voice low and soothing in her ear, and she focused on that rather than the pain. Thomas took one look at her white face and ran for the wagon. "I will get the doctor," he said. "No," Winifred managed. "We cannot afford a doctor, just splint it." "Winifred," Zachary said firmly, "you need a doctor." "We do not have the money," she said. Black spots were dancing at the edges of her vision, and she thought she might pass out. "Just splint it and it will heal." "I have money," Zachary said. "Not much, but enough for a doctor. Thomas, go get him." Winifred wanted to argue, wanted to maintain her independence, but the pain was overwhelming and she did not have the strength. She let Zachary carry her into the house and lay her on the bed, let him hold her hand while they waited for the doctor, let herself lean on someone else for the first time in so long. The doctor arrived an hour later, an older man named Simmons who had practiced in Yuba City for 30 years. He examined her arm with practiced efficiency, then looked at her seriously. "It is broken," he said. "Clean break, should heal fine if you keep it still, but you need to stay off horseback for at least 6 weeks. No heavy lifting, no strenuous activity." "6 weeks," Winifred said in dismay. "I cannot stay off a horse for 6 weeks. I have a ranch to run." "You have a hired hand to run the ranch," Dr. Simmons said firmly, nodding at Zachary. "Let him do the heavy work while you heal. Otherwise that arm might not set properly and then you will have real problems." He splinted her arm and left instructions for changing the bandages, then rode away with 5 of Zachary's precious dollars. Winifred lay on the bed feeling useless and frustrated, hating the helplessness of injury. Zachary appeared in the doorway with a cup of water and 2 pills. "Doctor left these for the pain," he said. "You should take them." "I do not like being drugged," Winifred protested. "I do not like seeing you in pain," Zachary countered. He sat on the edge of the bed and waited until she took the pills, then set the cup aside. "You need to rest, Winifred. Thomas and I can handle things for a few weeks." "Thomas cannot even remember to close the barn door half the time," Winifred said. "Then I will remember for him." Zachary's voice was gentle but firm. "You have been carrying this burden alone for too long. Let someone else help for a change." Winifred looked at him, at the concern in his dark eyes and the set of his jaw, and felt something crack open in her chest. "Why do you care so much?" she asked quietly. "This is not your ranch. I am not your responsibility." Zachary was quiet for a long moment. "You are not my responsibility," he agreed finally. "But you matter to me, Winifred. What happens to you matters to me." The admission hung in the air between them, weighted with all the things neither of them had said. Winifred felt her heart hammering in her chest, and for once it had nothing to do with pain. "You matter to me too," she said softly. Zachary reached out and brushed a strand of hair back from her face, the gesture so tender it made her throat ache. "Then rest," he said. "Let me take care of things for a while. Trust me." It should have been impossible, trusting someone else with her ranch after months of doing everything herself, but Winifred found that she did trust him. Completely. "All right," she said, "but you have to tell me everything that happens. I do not want to be left out." "Deal," Zachary said, and his smile was like sunshine breaking through clouds. The next 6 weeks were an exercise in patience and frustration. Winifred chafed at the forced inactivity, hated sitting on the porch while Zachary and Thomas did the work she should have been doing. But Zachary was true to his word, reporting in every evening with detailed accounts of what they had accomplished, asking her advice on decisions, making her feel included even when she could not physically help. Thomas surprised her by rising to the challenge, working harder than she had ever seen him work. He seemed to have finally understood that the ranch was not just his sister's burden but his future as well, and he threw himself into learning everything he could from Zachary. Caldwell made no more overt moves, but Winifred saw his men riding the boundary regularly, watching, waiting. It made her nervous, but Zachary had reinforced all the fences and set up simple alarms that would alert them if anyone tried to cut through at night, and she had to trust that it would be enough. As October turned to November and the nights grew cold, Winifred found herself spending more time with Zachary in the evenings after Thomas had gone to bed. They would sit on the porch wrapped in blankets, talking about everything and nothing, their conversations ranging from practical matters about the ranch to deeper questions about life and dreams and regrets. She learned that he had been engaged once, years ago, to a girl in Oregon who broke it off when he told her he wanted to keep working ranches rather than settle in town. She learned that he loved the work not despite its hardships, but because of them, that there was something deeply satisfying to him about measuring progress in fence posts mended and cattle tended and seasons turned. He learned about her father's dreams for the ranch, about how her mother had hated the isolation and loneliness of ranch life, but stayed because she loved her husband. He learned about Winifred's own dreams, how she had once wanted to travel and see cities and oceans but had fallen in love with the land instead, had found a sense of purpose in the endless cycle of work and seasons. One evening in mid-November, with her arm finally healed enough to shed the splint, they sat watching the stars emerge in the darkening sky. The air was cold and crisp, smelling of coming winter, and Winifred pulled her blanket tighter around her shoulders. "I do not know how to thank you," she said quietly, "for everything you have done these past months. You saved this ranch, Zachary. I could not have held on without you." "You would have found a way," Zachary said. "You are the most determined person I have ever met." "Stubborn, you mean," Winifred said with a slight smile. "That too," Zachary agreed. "But there is strength in stubbornness sometimes. You refuse to let circumstances break you, refuse to let Caldwell or anyone else tell you what you could or could not do." He paused, choosing his words carefully. "A lot of men would say you are too independent, that a woman should not be so strong-willed, so determined to make her own way." "And what would you say?" Winifred asked, her heart suddenly beating faster. Zachary turned to look at her, his eyes dark and serious in the starlight. "I would say that independence is what I admire most," he said quietly. You do not need anyone, Winifred. You could run this ranch on your own if you had to, but I hope you will not. I hope you will let me stay, not because you need me, but because you want me here." The words hung between them, a confession and a question all at once. Winifred felt like she was standing on the edge of something vast and terrifying and wonderful. "I want you here," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "I want you here so much it scares me." "Why does it scare you?" Zachary asked gently. "Because wanting things has always led to loss," Winifred said. The truth came spilling out before she could stop it. "My mother wanted stability and got isolation. My father wanted to build something lasting and died before he could see it through. I wanted a family and lost everyone I loved. Every time I want something, it gets taken away." "Not this time," Zachary said. He reached out and took her hand, his fingers warm and calloused. "I am not going anywhere, Winifred. Unless you tell me to go, I will be right here as long as you will have me." Winifred looked at their joined hands, at the way his fingers intertwined with hers, and felt something inside her surrender. She had been fighting for so long, holding the world at arm's length to protect herself from more loss, but she was so tired of fighting. And Zachary was offering something she had not even known she wanted, not rescue or protection, but partnership, companionship, love. "I am not good at this," she said, "at letting people in, at trusting that things will work out." "We will figure it out together," Zachary said. He squeezed her hand gently. "If you are willing to try." She looked at him, at the steady strength in his face and the hope in his eyes, and made her decision. "I am willing," she said. Zachary smiled, a real smile that lit up his entire face, and leaned forward slowly, giving her time to pull away. When she did not, he kissed her, soft and gentle and full of promise. Winifred felt herself melting into it, her free hand coming up to curl in the fabric of his shirt, and for the first time in months she felt something other than fear and worry. She felt hope. They pulled apart eventually, both a little breathless, and Zachary rested his forehead against hers. "I have wanted to do that for weeks," he admitted. "Why did you wait so long?" Winifred asked. "Because I wanted you to be sure," Zachary said. "I did not want you to think I was here for anything other than the right reasons. I wanted you to know that I respect you and your choices, whether that includes me or not." The honesty of it made Winifred's chest ache. "That is exactly why I want you," she said. "Because you never tried to take over or control me. You just stood beside me and let me be who I am." They sat together on the porch until the cold drove them inside. And when Zachary kissed her goodnight at the bottom of the stairs, Winifred felt like she was floating. Thomas noticed the change immediately the next morning, grinning over his breakfast at the way Zachary and Winifred could not seem to stop looking at each other. "Finally," he said. "I thought you two would dance around this forever." "Mind your own business," Winifred said, but she was smiling. "Does this mean Zachary is staying permanently?" Thomas asked. Winifred looked at Zachary, raising an eyebrow in question. "That depends," she said. "Are you, if you will have me," Zachary said simply. "Then yes," Winifred said, "he is staying." The announcement seemed to settle something in Thomas, some worry she had not even realized he was carrying. "Good," he said. "This place needs both of you." Winter came on hard and fast that year, bringing freezing rain and harsh winds that howled across the valley. They moved the cattle to sheltered grazing and spent long hours in the barn making sure the animals had enough feed and water. It was hard work, but for the first time Winifred found joy in it, rather than just grim determination. Having Zachary beside her made everything feel possible, and even Thomas seemed happier, joking and laughing as they worked instead of sulking and complaining. Caldwell left them alone through the worst of the weather, and Winifred allowed herself to hope that maybe he had finally given up. But when the first thaw came in late January, bringing mud and the promise of spring, Caldwell showed up at the ranch again with a new proposal. "I heard congratulations are in order," he said, eyeing the way Zachary stood protectively close to Winifred. "You and your hired man. That is convenient." "What do you want, Caldwell?" Winifred asked coldly. "I want to make you one final offer," Caldwell said. "Sell me your ranch, take a fair price for it, and get out while you can. I am done playing games, Miss Foster. Come spring, I am expanding my operation and I need your water access. You can sell to me now and walk away with money in your pocket, or I can make your life so difficult you will beg me to buy it just to escape." "We are not selling," Zachary said firmly. "I was not talking to you," Caldwell snapped. "This is between me and Miss Foster." "Anything you say to her, you can say to me," Zachary said. "We are partners." Something ugly flickered in Caldwell's eyes. "Partners," he repeated. "Is that what they are calling it now? Tell me, Rawlins, does she pay you in cash or in other ways?" Zachary took a step forward, his hands clenching into fists, but Winifred grabbed his arm. "Do not," she said quietly. "He is trying to provoke you. You should listen to your woman," Caldwell said with a nasty smile. "She seems to have more sense than you do." He turned back to Winifred. "1 week. You have 1 week to think about my offer. After that, all bets are off." He rode away, and Winifred felt the familiar sick dread settling in her stomach. "He is not going to stop," she said. "We can keep fighting him, but eventually he will find a way to hurt us." "Then we need to go to the law," Zachary said. "Report his threats, get it on record that he is trying to force you out." "The sheriff is Caldwell's cousin," Winifred said bitterly. "The law is not going to help us." "Then we go over his head," Zachary said. "Write to the territorial marshal. Document everything Caldwell has done. It might not stop him immediately, but it will make it harder for him to claim ignorance if things escalate." It was a good idea, and over the next several days they compiled a detailed account of every threat, every act of sabotage, every attempt Caldwell had made to force them off their land. Winifred sent the letter to the marshal's office in Sacramento and prayed it would be enough. But Caldwell did not wait for the law. 3 days before his deadline, Winifred woke in the middle of the night to the smell of smoke. She was out of bed and running before her mind fully caught up, grabbing her rifle and racing downstairs. Through the window she could see flames licking at the corner of the barn, bright and hungry in the darkness. "Fire!" she screamed. "Thomas, Zachary, fire!" They came running, Zachary from the bunkhouse and Thomas stumbling from his room, and the 3 of them formed a bucket brigade from the well to the barn. The flames had not spread far yet, concentrated in one corner where someone had clearly set them deliberately, and they managed to douse them before the whole structure caught. When it was over, they stood in the muddy yard, exhausted and covered in soot, staring at the charred timbers. Zachary walked the perimeter of the barn, examining the ground, then came back with his face set in grim lines. "Tracks," he said. 3 horses came in from the north. They doused the corner in kerosene and lit it, probably expecting the whole thing to burn before we noticed. "Caldwell," Winifred said. Her hands were shaking with exhaustion and rage. This was Caldwell. "We do not have proof," Thomas said. "We do not need proof to know the truth," Winifred said. She looked at the barn, at the damage that could have been so much worse, and felt something harden inside her. "I will not live like this. I will not spend every night wondering if tonight is the night he burns us out or kills our cattle or worse." "What do you want to do?" Zachary asked quietly. "I want to confront him," Winifred said. "Tomorrow in town in front of witnesses. I want everyone to know what he is doing, and I want him to understand that I will not be intimidated." "That could be dangerous," Zachary warned. If he is willing to burn buildings, he might be willing to do worse. Then I guess we will find out, Winifred said. She looked at him steadily. But I will not run. This is my land, and I am not leaving it. Zachary held her gaze for a long moment, then nodded slowly. Then we do this together, he said. All three of us. The next morning they rode into Yuba City together, tired and grim but determined. The main street was busy with morning commerce, and Winifred spotted Caldwell's horse tied up outside the saloon. She dismounted and walked through the swinging doors with Zachary and Thomas flanking her. The saloon fell silent as she entered. Women rarely came into such establishments, and certainly not with such obvious purpose. Caldwell was at a table in the back with several of his men, and he looked up in surprise that quickly turned to irritation. "Miss Foster," he said, his voice carrying in the sudden quiet, "this is not a place for respectable women." "And yet here I am," Winifred said. She walked straight to his table, aware of every eye in the room on her. "I want everyone here to witness what I am about to say. Last night, someone set fire to my barn. It was arson, deliberate and criminal. 3 riders came onto my property in the middle of the night, doused the building in kerosene, and lit it on fire." "That is a serious accusation," Caldwell said. "I hope you have proof." "I have tracks," Winifred said, "and I have a pattern of harassment going back months. Cut fences, stolen cattle, threats, and now arson. You have been trying to drive me off my land since the day my father died, Caldwell, and I am here to tell you it will not work. I am not selling. I am not leaving, and if you or your men set foot on my property again, I will defend it with lethal force if necessary." "Big words from a little woman," one of Caldwell's men sneered. "She is also the woman who pays her debts and keeps her promises," Zachary said quietly. His hand rested on the grip of his pistol, not threatening but visible. "Unlike some people," Caldwell's face had gone red, "you cannot prove anything," he said, "and making wild accusations in public is a good way to get sued for slander." "Sue me then," Winifred said. "I am sure a judge would be very interested in hearing about all your business practices, not just the ones involving me. How many other small ranchers have you squeezed out over the years, Caldwell?" The room was utterly silent now, everyone straining to hear. Caldwell stood slowly, his bulk towering over Winifred, but she held her ground. "You are playing a dangerous game," he said softly. "You might want to think about what you are risking." "I am risking everything I have left," Winifred said, "but so are you. Because if anything happens to me or my ranch or anyone I care about, there is a detailed letter in the hands of the territorial marshal outlining every crime you have committed. Touch me again, and you will hang for it." It was a bluff, or at least a partial one. The letter was real, but whether the marshal would act on it was anyone's guess. But Caldwell did not know that, and she saw uncertainty flicker in his pale eyes. "This is not over," he said. "Yes, it is," Winifred said. "You just do not know it yet." She turned and walked out of the saloon with her head high, Zachary and Thomas following. Her knees were shaking so badly she could barely mount her horse, but she managed it, and they rode out of town in silence. They were halfway home when Zachary started laughing. It was a surprised, slightly incredulous sound, and soon Thomas joined in, and then Winifred found herself laughing too, giddy with relief and leftover adrenaline. "That was insane," Thomas said. "You called out Marcus Caldwell in front of half the town. He is going to come after us for sure now." "Maybe," Winifred said. "Or maybe he will realize that we are more trouble than we are worth. Either way, I am done being afraid of him." When they got home, she wrote another letter to the marshal, this one detailing the arson and the public confrontation, then rode to town alone to post it. She half expected Caldwell or his men to intercept her, but the road was quiet and she made it back without incident. The next few weeks passed in tense waiting. They reinforced the barn, kept watch at night, and went about the work of the ranch with weapons always close at hand. But Caldwell did not come, and slowly Winifred began to believe that maybe, just maybe, they had won. Spring came late that year, but when it arrived it transformed the valley into a carpet of wildflowers and new grass. The cattle fattened on the good grazing, and Winifred calculated that they would have a decent number to sell come fall. The ranch was not prosperous yet, but it was surviving, and that was enough. One warm evening in early April, Zachary asked Winifred to walk with him down to the river. The sun was setting in a blaze of orange and pink, and the air smelled of growing things and possibility. They stood on the riverbank watching the water flow past, and Zachary took her hand. "I have been thinking," he said, "about the future, about what we are building here." "What have you been thinking?" Winifred asked. "That I do not want to just be your hired hand anymore," Zachary said. He turned to face her, his expression serious. "I want to be your partner in every sense of the word. I want to build this ranch with you, grow old with you, make a life together." He took a deep breath. "I want to marry you, Winifred, if you will have me." Winifred felt tears prick her eyes, but they were happy tears for once. "Yes," she said simply. "Yes, I will marry you." Zachary pulled her into his arms and kissed her, and Winifred felt like everything had finally fallen into place. This was what she had been fighting for all along. Not just the land, but the life that could be lived on it, the family that could be built, the future that could be forged from hard work and stubborn determination and love. They were married in June in a simple ceremony in Yuba City, with Thomas as witness and half the town in attendance. To Winifred's surprise, several of the neighboring ranchers showed up, men who had been coolly distant during her father's illness and death, but who seemed grudgingly impressed by her refusal to be driven out. Even more surprising, Marcus Caldwell sent a wedding gift, an expensive set of silver candlesticks with a note that simply said, "No hard feelings." "Do you think he means it?" Thomas asked, examining the candlesticks suspiciously. "I think he knows when he is beaten," Zachary said. "And he is trying to save face. Let him. As long as he leaves us alone, I do not care about his motives." They had a small celebration at the ranch, and Winifred danced with her new husband under the stars while Thomas played fiddle, and the few friends they had made cheered them on. It was not fancy or elaborate, but it was perfect, exactly what Winifred had always secretly dreamed of when she let herself dream at all. That night, lying in bed beside Zachary with her head on his chest, Winifred felt a peace she had not known in years. "Thank you," she said quietly, "for not trying to change me, for loving me the way I am." "There is nothing about you I would change," Zachary said. He ran his fingers through her hair, the gesture tender and soothing. "You are exactly who you should be, Winifred, strong and stubborn and independent. Those are not flaws, no matter what anyone else says. They are what make you extraordinary." "Most men would not think so," Winifred said. "I am not most men," Zachary said. "And your independence is what I admire most about you. The way you refuse to be told what you cannot do, the way you fight for what matters to you, the way you build something from nothing through sheer determination. That is not something to be ashamed of or to hide. That is something to celebrate." Winifred felt her throat tighten with emotion. "I spent so long thinking I had to do everything alone," she said. "That needing help meant I was weak." "Needing help does not make you weak," Zachary said. "It makes you human, and accepting help when it is offered does not mean you are giving up your independence. It just means you are smart enough to recognize when working together makes you stronger." "When did you get so wise?" Winifred asked with a slight smile. "I have always been wise," Zachary said. You just did not notice because you were too busy trying to save the world by yourself." She laughed and kissed him, and they fell asleep tangled together. Two people who had found in each other exactly what they needed. The years that followed were not easy, but they were good. The ranch slowly prospered under their joint management, the herd growing and the land recovering from years of neglect. Thomas matured into a responsible young man who eventually took over much of the daily operations, freeing Zachary and Winifred to expand into horse breeding, using the good bloodlines Zachary had noticed in her original string. Their first child was born in the spring of 1884, a healthy boy they named James after Winifred's father. Winifred worked right up until the day she went into labor, refusing to be sidelined by pregnancy, and was back on horseback within weeks of giving birth, with little James strapped to her back in a sling. Zachary worried about her pushing herself too hard, but he also knew better than to try to stop her, so he just made sure she had help when she needed it and support when she did not. 2 years later, they had a daughter, Sarah, who inherited her mother's red hair and stubborn temperament. Watching Winifred teach their children to ride and rope and respect the land, Zachary was reminded daily of why he had fallen in love with her in the first place. She was a force of nature, unstoppable and magnificent, and he counted himself lucky every day that she had chosen to share her life with him. Marcus Caldwell died in 1886, thrown from a horse and breaking his neck in the fall. His sons sold the ranch and moved east, and the property was eventually bought by a family from Oregon who proved to be friendly neighbors. The threat that had loomed over them for so long simply evaporated, and Winifred found she could finally breathe freely. Thomas married a schoolteacher from Sacramento in 1887, a smart, practical woman named Elizabeth who loved the ranch almost as much as he did. They built a house on the far end of the property and raised their own family there, and the Foster Ranch became a true family operation spanning 2 generations. On their 10th wedding anniversary, Zachary took Winifred back down to the river where he had proposed. The children were with Thomas and Elizabeth for the evening, and they had a rare moment of privacy to watch the sunset together. "You ever regret it?" Winifred asked, leaning against his shoulder. "Tying yourself to a stubborn, independent woman who can never just accept help gracefully?" "Not once," Zachary said honestly. "Do you ever regret letting me stay, allowing someone to share your burden when you were so used to carrying it alone?" "Never," Winifred said. "You gave me something I did not even know I was missing, not just help with the ranch, but partnership. Someone who saw me as I am and loved me for it rather than despite it." "You are too independent for most men," Zachary said, echoing words from long ago. "But independence is what I admire most about you. It always has been, and it always will be." Winifred turned to look at him, this man who had shown up all those years ago looking for work and ended up saving her in ways she had not even known she needed saving. "I love you," she said simply. "I love you too," Zachary said, "now and always." They sat together as the sun set over the valley, over the land they had fought for and built together, and Winifred felt a contentment so deep it was almost painful. This life they had created was not perfect. There were still hard days and setbacks, still droughts and market crashes and all the 1,000 difficulties that came with ranching. But they faced those challenges together, and that made all the difference. In the years that followed, the ranch continued to grow and prosper. James grew into a tall, serious young man who loved the land as much as his parents did, and Sarah became a skilled horsewoman who could outride most of the men in the valley. They had a third child in 1889, another boy they named Thomas after Winifred's brother, and he proved to be the quietest of the 3, happiest when working with the horses or reading books in the evening. Winifred never lost her independent streak, never stopped being the woman who had stood up to Marcus Caldwell and refused to be driven from her land. But she learned to balance that independence with partnership, to accept help when it was offered without feeling like she was surrendering her strength. Zachary never tried to change her or diminish her, just stood beside her and loved her exactly as she was, and that made all the difference. They grew old together on that ranch, watching their children grow and have children of their own, watching the valley change and modernize while their land remained a constant. On quiet evenings, they would sit on the porch where they had first kissed all those years ago, holding hands and watching the sun set, and Winifred would think about how close she had come to losing everything. But she had not lost it. She had fought for it, yes, but she had also accepted help when it was offered, had opened her heart to love when she thought she would always be alone, had learned that independence and partnership were not opposing forces but could coexist and make each other stronger. When Zachary died peacefully in his sleep in 1912, at the age of 60, Winifred mourned him with a grief that threatened to break her. But she did not break, because he had taught her that strength came not from standing alone, but from knowing who would stand with you when it mattered. Their children and grandchildren surrounded her with love and support, and the ranch continued on, a living testament to everything she and Zachary had built together. Winifred lived until 1921, dying at the age of 61 with her children and grandchildren gathered around her bed. Her last words were to tell them to hold onto the land, to never give up what was theirs, to fight for what mattered, and to never be afraid of being too independent or too strong. "Your independence is your strength," she told her granddaughter Sarah, named after her daughter. "Do not let anyone tell you different, but do not be afraid to accept help when it is offered by someone who loves you for who you are. That is the secret I learned from your grandfather. You can be strong and independent and still let people in. The two are not opposites. They are partners, just like he and I were partners." She died that night, slipping away peacefully in her sleep, and was buried beside Zachary on a hill overlooking the ranch they had built together. The land passed to their children, and then to their grandchildren, and it remained in the family for generations. A legacy of stubbornness and love, and the belief that anything worth having was worth fighting for. Years later, when people told the story of Winifred Foster and her ranch, they always mentioned her independence, her refusal to be driven out or defeated. But they also mentioned Zachary Rawlins, the cowboy who had seen that independence and admired it rather than fearing it, who had stood beside her rather than trying to stand in front of her, who had loved her exactly as she was, and helped her build something that lasted long after both of them were gone. It was a love story for the ages, set in the harsh beauty of the California Valley, a story of two people who found in each other exactly what they needed. Winifred had been too independent for most men, but Zachary had understood that independence was not something to be tamed or controlled. It was something to be celebrated and supported and cherished. And in the end, that made all the difference. The Foster Ranch still stands today, a historic landmark in Yuba City, preserved by the descendants of Winifred and Zachary as a reminder of what can be built when two people choose to face the world together. Visitors walk through the old house and barn, see the original fence posts Zachary repaired all those years ago, read the letters Winifred wrote to the territorial marshal fighting for her right to keep her land. But more than the physical structures, what endures is the story itself, a testament to the truth that independence and love are not opposing forces but complementary ones. Winifred Foster was fiercely independent, yes, but she was also wise enough to recognize when someone offered her partnership rather than control, support rather than domination, And Zachary Rawlins, the cowboy who showed up looking for work all those years ago, understood what so many others did not. That a strong, independent woman was not something to be feared or diminished, but something to be admired and celebrated. He had seen her strength and been drawn to it rather than threatened by it, and that had made all the difference. Their love story became legend in the valley, told and retold through generations as an example of what was possible when two people chose to build something together rather than alone. It was not a story of rescue or salvation, but of partnership and respect, and the kind of love that made both people stronger. In the end, that was the real legacy of Winifred Foster and Zachary Rawlins. Not just the ranch they built or the family they raised, but the proof that independence and love could coexist, that strength and vulnerability were two sides of the same coin, and that the right partnership could help you become more fully yourself rather than less. The land remembers them still, in the old fence posts and barn timbers, in the river that flows past the house where they raised their children, in the hill where they rest side by side overlooking everything they built together. And visitors who come to the ranch and hear their story leave understanding something profound about the nature of love and partnership, and what it means to truly see and value another person for exactly who they are. Winifred Foster was too independent for most men, they say. But Zachary Rawlins understood that independence was what made her extraordinary, and he loved her all the more for it. Together they built something that lasted, a love story that transcended time and place to become a legend, a reminder that the best partnerships are built not on one person changing to fit the other's expectations, but on two people choosing to stand side by side, exactly as they are, and face the world together. And that, in the end, is what made their story worth telling and remembering and passing down through the generations. Not just that they survived and prospered, but that they did it while remaining true to themselves and to each other, building a love that was as strong and enduring as the land they fought to protect. Their legacy lives on not just in the physical structures and the family that descended from them, but in the idea itself, the radical notion that a woman could be independent and strong and still find partnership and love, that a man could admire those qualities rather than being threatened by them, and that together they could build something greater than either could have created alone. That was the true gift Winifred and Zachary gave to the world. Proof that love and independence were not opposing forces but could strengthen and support each other. That the right partnership enhanced rather than diminished individual strength. And that sometimes the greatest act of independence was choosing to stand beside someone rather than always standing alone. And so their story endures, a testament to love and stubbornness, and the power of two people who chose to face the world together, building something lasting from the hard soil of the California Valley, and the even harder work of learning to trust and love and believe that tomorrow could be better than today. The ranch stands as their monument, but the real legacy is in the hearts of those who hear their story and understand that true partnership does not require sacrificing independence, that love can make you stronger rather than weaker, and that sometimes the greatest courage is not in standing alone, but in choosing to stand beside someone who sees you for exactly who you are and loves you for it. Winifred Foster and Zachary Rawlins built more than a ranch in those hard years in the California Valley. They built a life, a family, and a love story that would inspire generations. And in doing so, they proved that independence and partnership, strength and vulnerability, standing alone and standing together were not contradictions but could coexist and make each other stronger. That was their gift to the world, and it endures still in the old ranch house overlooking the valley, in the descendants who still work the land, and in every person who hears their story and understands that love at its best does not diminish but amplifies, does not control but supports, and does not fear independence but celebrates it as the precious, powerful thing it is.